All right, thank you all for coming. Today's event is one of our public event series. We try to do public events 3-4 times a year, along with some other events, which I'm going to go through. Oh, thank you. You have can you put it there? Oh, yeah, can you put it over there? And once a year, we try to do something fun and educational. So this is the third time doing it. 3 years ago, we had a whiskey tasting event. Who was here for that whiskey tasting event? Okay, just David. Oh my God! So these are all new people. All right, and we had like 12 different whiskeys, and people just came and got drunk, I guess. But it was fun times. And then last year we had what we called Art of Distribution. And guess what that was about? Anyone want to guess? Art of distribution. Yes, distribution. Why art? Art, and that is true. That is true. We talked about how to use creativity to be a better distributor, but we also brought artists like from the insurance industry, and they actually showcased their art. And one of the artists, Jason Groves, I don't know where you are. He actually is a really great artist, and he inspired us to actually hold that event last year. And today is kind of our third part in the series is called Sound of Underwriting. And so, yes, we're going to talk about underwriting, but we're also going to have sound. So we're going to have musicians from the insurance industry play music. So the music you've been listening to is our host DJ Brian Poppe. He's a awesome DJ, daytime executive of income and wealth planning at Mutual Omaha. So completely different, kind of like, role, but it works. Yeah. All right. So that's Brian. He's going to be DJing for us today. And then also at the end of, after our panel and everything, he'll be DJing at the end as well. So before we get started with some music and panel on underwriting, I just want to share a bit about us. For those of you who are new to our community, we do a lot of different things to connect people in the insurance industry. We host startup programs. So there's basically accelerators and competition we run. We run an early stage startup competition at the beginning of the year. We also do this thing called InsurTech Match program, where we match InsurTechs to carriers and brokers. We also have an accelerator called MGA Lab, where we help startups create MGA businesses. The applications for both are live now. They're active, so if you're interested, please apply, and you will get to participate in the program starting September. We also host education and networking events, this being one of them. We also host a big annual conference called InsurTech Spring Conference. In next year, it will be in April 2nd and 3rd. So hopefully you guys can make that. And we also host executive roundtables, which is a more of an invite-only carrier broker executive event that we just hosted earlier before this one. And we also invest. So if you're a seats stage InsurTech, let us know. We love to talk to you to see if you're a good fit for our fund. And this is our calendar for the year. We're right in the middle, June. We have started sourcing and selecting startups for InsurTech Match and MGA Lab program, which will start in September. And we also, our next public event is actually going to be Agent Tech. Actually, it says Broker Tech, but it's really for agents. We're going to have like an all-day event, which I'll share a little bit more in detail. So yes, leveraging the latest Agent Tech. Hopefully you can see this a little. I'm not sure why it's not super clear, but it is Agent Tech. So we're going to have two parts to this event. First part of the day is going to be about 20 to 30 agents have a table, and those InsurTechs who want to work with agents, whether they are MGAs, want to ask them to distribute their product, or it could be a Agent Tech solution provider. We'll match you up and you rotate around and meet with them. So it's a great kind of networking, customized networking event we're going to host. And then the evening will be something like this, but it's more educational focused. We're going to have panel and presentations on how agents can use Agent Tech. So please join us back for that. It'll likely be in our normal office building. We're actually typically we host our events in our office on 23rd Street, but they have some availability issues, so we're hosting here. But it's great place here, and hopefully we'll be able to host in both places in the future. I want to thank Instabase for sponsoring this event. Thank you. Yeah. Boss is going to be one of the panelists, so he'll share more about the company. But it's an AI-based company. They've been around for a few years, doing great, amazing stuff in the insurance. I'll start as banking, but now market leader in the AI automation space in insurance. So this is our agenda. We're going to get started now with music performance, get into panel underwriting the entertainment industry. And then we're going to go back to some music and then finish it off, or Brian will finish up the DJing until the very end. There'll be pizza and drinks until 8:30. So feel free to leverage that. All right. So somebody said there's insurance play in everything. So what is the insurance play on what we just saw, right? So there is. So I want to ask David to come up and all the speakers to come up. Our next panel, our first panel, and the only panel actually today, we're going to have Jamie, Maxie, and Boss, moderated by David, talk about how to underwrite the entertainment industry and bring it down to earth a little bit, okay? All right.
Great. So while my panelists are getting their mics set up, I will introduce each of them. So at the left is Boss from Instabase, and he leads their growth marketing. Sorry, guys. Famously known for the guy who, which has evidence for it, coined the term InsurTech as it is spelled today. So I think he has proof on Twitter, now X. So definitely, after the show, follow up with him on that. Next, in the middle is Max, who leads the media and entertainment division at Chubb. So everyone knows Chubb for all the great lines of business, but now you can get to know them for entertainment as well. And then most close to me is Jamie, who's the head of strategy innovation within Arch's A&H group. So it's kind of some of the new products that they're bringing to market. So if you think about the risks of all of the performers, Jamie probably thought of it, a half hour before you. All right, so we're going to talk about the entertainment landscape, how to de-risk some of the insurance opportunities there, and then pricing the unknowns. So I thought, since Max, you probably have the broadest spectrum that you cover here. Can you share with us, how does Chubb segment down the entertainment industry? What are all the segments, and what are some ones that you think are strategically important?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So I'm Max from Chubb. So I'm personally in charge for the casualty and property division at Chubb, but we also have some representatives from our A&H department as well. So we also have an international department, and we underwrite all of the spheres, if you will, of entertainment industry. So ranging from film insurance to Broadway theaters to touring entertainers, everything that touches entertainment and media as well. So all the broadcasting companies fall within that segment as well. So focusing on property and casualty, but we also have all lines of business, as you were saying, very broad range of products for the entertainment industry.
So Max, what is the riskiest area of business that you run?
I mean, insurance is risky everywhere, right? So it's difficult to say, to pinpoint, accident, and Jamie can comment on that maybe later. Accident has risky business, some of the entertainment shows, think of some of the reality shows, for example, where they have to cover the contestants, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. On my side of things, property and casualty, some of these touring entertainers have very large schedules of equipment, in the tens of millions of dollars traveling across the country. Casualty, general liability is also a very risky type of business, especially in our industry, because it's so high profile, right? Like think of all the actors, a singer, it brings a lot of media attention. So I would say probably liability because of the limits that are involved as well and the defense and everything. So that's probably my take.
Yeah, that sounds frightening, having the job to defend one of these, famous actors or actresses, after they've been involved in one of these incidents on stage, because you have all the public media exposure. So, let's talk about the accident health side with Jamie. There's a number of, famous performers and musicians that have insured body parts, like David Beckham famously insured his legs for 70 million, and Tina Turner, this was, a little less inflation back then, but 3 million on her legs. So what is all these like parts about? Is that something that you cover? And, are there other more standard areas that is more common for Arch?
Yeah, right. So, hi, I'm Jamie. I'm from Arch Accident Health. Typically we wouldn't cover those types of things out of the A&H area unless you happen to get dismembered. Then your leg's worth something. So you have a couple of core coverages that fall under A&H. You have what's called a guild contract, and that's a union contract, and they have a collective bargaining agreement, and they negotiate for certain accident benefits within their collective bargaining agreement. Then there's a single production coverage for, just like what you mentioned, you have all these different reality TV shows. My old mentor, was an expert in this business for many, many years. One of my favorite things to do was to sit in his office in the morning and debrief over all the new productions that came in. Some interesting stuff that never actually makes it to television that you get to hear about. I remember one particularly concerning idea they had about somebody in a winged flight suit flying in between two skyscrapers in a big city. I don't know what the name of it was. I think maybe Splat. And then, there have just been a number of others. And those are inherently dangerous. You have accident, medical expenses, people who are doing those types of performances as a participant, they can tear up a knee. You could be underwriting a stage production, and you could have one of the performers get pretty severely injured. You look at things, some of the more commonly known injuries that happen in sports and entertainment. If you look at back a few years ago, and I think it's happened more than once, you look at like a WWE performer, died, falling, doing a stunt, coming down onto the canvas. So, a lot of times in the A&H area, you're covering people for high limit accidental death. You're covering people for medical expenses, hospitalization. And then if they're out of the country, things like out of country medical and medical evacuations become extremely important when on location. Sometimes they're in, areas where you have, they're hard to get to. I think we had to do, in my last company, I think we had to do an evac for one of the survivor contestants, from, one of those islands. So there's a lot of little intricacies in accident and health that work with the liability coverage and liability coverage provider.
Yeah, no, I think, a lot of these topics can be very serious. I was reading in the Apple News yesterday about now with Alec Baldwin's case about the accidental shooting that he had, they're determining whether the court can bring in the armorer as potentially, witness against him. So, think about the, I would say, defense costs that you're going to have associated with all that expert testimony. And, that's things that we all have to think about as an industry. So, boss, since you've been on the cutting edge since, early naming rights, let us know like where you see some of this intersection between media and technology. Now there's TikTokers out there, there's liability coming from things that people, like the Terminator are getting into politics. How is that something that we should watch out for and be aware of and use the data from?
Thanks, David. So yeah, my name is Bas. I lead insurance at InsurBase, which is, to your point, one of the leading companies in the field of generative AI. even if you go to an InsurTech event here, you cannot escape this particular buzzword. But I'm glad to be here. When it comes to these types of things, I think that technology is always a two-edged sword. So on the one hand, you have, as insurers, and especially when it comes to like even specialty insurance, we have the ability to process so much more data, understand highly unstructured data, even at very low volumes. When you're reviewing things within the entertainment insurance, there is, you cannot really standardize towards that because the volumes are much lower and the types of complexity are very high. But with generative AI, we are able to go through that type of information really, really quickly and actually obtain the insights instantly by just asking natural language questions. Now, the flip side to that, to your point, is that that applies to fraudsters as well. So the ability to falsify information, or when it comes to art, art insurance also really important niche. To falsify art in that sense is, duplicate is very, very easy. Likewise, what we have seen with Taylor Swift just a couple months ago, cybersecurity and the ability of technology platforms to to actually just process. In case of Ticketmaster, the platform collapsed and thousands of people that were without tickets, with all sorts of things that you've undoubtedly followed in the news as a result. And so the type of risk that is coming with the changes in technology applies very much to this particular niche as well. And that's why it's super, super interesting to be at this intersection of technology, media, and insurance. It's a fascinating place to be.
Yeah, I mean, boss, you raised a great point with cybersecurity, given all the information that we have about these performers and entertainers. And maybe it's a question for you, Jamie, is like, you have these people's medical records. What are you doing to protect them from, the cyber thieves that want to know everything about, Tom Cruise's medical history before he gets on the next plane?
Well, we generally don't have information about them unless there's a claim. So hopefully Tom's going to be okay. I know he does a lot of his own stunts, and some of them are pretty hazardous. I wouldn't want a piece of him, although he's pretty good at them. I don't think he's died yet, at least not in real life. We take our data very seriously, just as every insurance company does. And our claims unit in A&H within our company is actually PCI compliant because we do a lot of travel, so we have a lot of people's data. It's protected just like many corporations, and Arch has a data security team that is responsible for ensuring the safety of data. So it's something that we take very seriously. But let's say we did have personal information on somebody famous, that information is only accessible by the people who need to have it in order to be able to process a claim. You wouldn't be able to go in and just, search for like Tom Cruise. Did he break a kneecap? How's he doing? That's not something you'd be able to do.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. You got to be like the Secret Service, only on the need to know basis. So the next section, I want to talk about de-risking some of these dangerous acts. As you mentioned, Jamie, Tom Cruise does do some of his own stunts, but as insurers, we have to think about how can we work with the production teams to be more effective. So maybe Max, let's dive into some of these, the shows that have the pyrotechnics, the magicians that work with the swords, or the live animals that are in the circus. What are things that you can do as an insurer to help the production teams focus on health and safety?
Yeah, so the first thing is really being proactive, right? So from the insured standpoint, demonstrating that they do care about safety and risk management. So a lot of safety consultants in that business on the production side, but also on the theatrical side for Broadway and touring companies. So safety consultants, working with productions day in, day out, just making sure that they have proper controls in place, right? Because you can insure everything. If you don't have the right controls, no premium is going to be enough. So controls are very important. At Chubb, we also have a risk engineering department, so we often work hand in hand with our insurers to make sure that their safety. making sure that their safety protocols are on par with the industry, making sure that we, manage as much as we can the risk. It's impossible to eliminate 100%, but definitely working. I would say the key thing would be working with safety consultants along with the insurers, risk management and risk engineering departments.
Yeah. So, given that a lot of these stages and acts are somewhat new, it'd be interesting to understand, you have this problem where there's a low amount of claims, but high severity, and you need to process all of the data in an effective way. So maybe this question's for you, boss. What tools can insurers put in place to make sure that when it happens, they know that they have the best picture of the world as fast as possible?
Yeah, so what frequently happens especially for specialty insurance and entertainment insurance in particular, is that you have to respond as an underwriter very, very quickly to a new quotation, because it's always going on. You have another event coming up, so you need to actually process a lot of information really, really rapidly. And now at the same time, as you as an insurer, you want to limit your risk taking. You want to understand what you are actually underwriting, and so you need to find a way in order to go through a lot of information really, really fast. And so the types of things that are available today is what we refer to as conversational AI, for example, where you can, even the most complex information, whether that is Excel sheets or that have a scheduled value with all of your different assets in there, or if it comes to a broker presentation with a complex 50, 60 page PDF document with lots of information in there, or if it is a list of the entire crew with all of their historical medical claims information in there. I mean, you can upload that these days all into an AI tool in order to query that information, even across and between documents and comparison, all with natural language questions. And so when it comes to either underwriters or claims adjusters, it allows them to go through information and infer insights from that information really, really rapidly. And so that allows underwriters to not only respond fast to brokers, but also do this at the highest quality possible.
So that's one side, the big claims, not very often. On the other side, you have, whether it's high school or collegiate sports, where there's a lot of people, there's a lot going on over a long period of time. So maybe from your perspective, Jamie, how do you look at the risk of high school and college sports? What are the data points that are important to understand whether this is the next concussion story on CNN or it's a well-run club?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so look, I mean, these are collegiate programs, unless you're getting into some kind of a new sport or it's a new school, are pretty mature and very credible. So we're looking at data across our entire book. We're looking at data from the school, the existing claims data, and we look at we look at the severity of the claims. We look at the claims tail, how long it takes to complete a claim. When you're working on something like intercollegiate sports, where you could be paying out a claim. Let's say you've got a $250,000 medical limit on somebody, and you could be paying that claim out over the course of 1 to 2 years, depending upon the severity of the injury and how much recurring. You could have multiple surgeries over time. You could have physical therapy, different types of therapy benefits, chiropractic. So you're paying all of those out over time. So you have to have a pretty agile claims department to be able to process those claims and get those claim payments out to make people whole. So it's just like any other. It's not dissimilar from other accident and health claims, or that's not really that's not an entertainment specific issue that runs the gamut across A&H, and we have a pretty skilled A&H department, and especially as it pertains to recurring payments, because we write disability. So we're used to paying out claims and having recurring payments over time, and that's right within our wheelhouse and a core competency of our claims department.
Yeah, no, I think, ultimately it sounds like it's a lot of just blocking and tackling, setting up the right processes in place, and, looking to the history of that specific club or that specific school.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, really important. There are risk people working within the schools. you have the head of athletics and their athletics departments and the training departments. So understanding, some of what they have in place is material to the risk and underwriting of the risk also.
Sure. So last section I wanted to cover is really, pricing the unknowns, because in entertainment, there's a lot of new things, and, hopefully we have a different sense of humor today than we did in the 1960s, but, maybe you're all here to judge, those of you who have been through both jokes. So I want to start with Boss, because you're able to look at the data sets, but what are some tools that are available to compare between new different things but the same person or the same organization, so you can look backward and forward about the potential production capabilities?
So the overall goal that insurers typically want to do is to create a predictive model. So at the end of the day, when you have like a new risk in, you want to create a model that actually starts to predict claims performance, so you can start attaching pricing towards them. The problem that you face when you are dealing with new risks is that frequently you do not have that type of data, or at least it is not easily accessible in a great format. And so some of the insurers that we are working with, they so this particular insurer had a great short-term disability product, but they wanted to launch into long-term disability as well. Didn't really know how to price that well. They had a lot of experience, obviously, but they didn't have the right data. And so what they did was they actually took 10 years worth of short-term disability data, which had like all of its like unstructured medical records in PDF format and things like that. 10 years back, they ran it all through, in this case, Instabase, in order to subsequently have structured data available after about 48 hours for their data science team to then model their long-term disability claims models. And so the ability to actually unlock the data that you already have as an insurer can be incredibly helpful in order to subsequently price new types of risks. And so that is just one angle of which you can look at these types of things.
Yeah, so it sounds like digging up those old file cabinets is the key to good underwriting.
Yep.
So Max, from your perspective, what are some examples of that, unstructured or non-traditional data sets that you've looked at that you've been kind of surprised how predictive they've been?
I mean, as Bas was saying, like there's lots of data involved in this, especially for like workers' compensation and things like that. So, sometimes looking at it across a portfolio, for example, can be very helpful to be able to set trends and things like that, and future predictability models and things like that. So I would say, we use data on a day-to-day basis. That's what we rely on for our pricing models and our underwriting decisions. So yeah, it's every day.
So this panel has all been good sports and, talked about everything that they could do and all the different forms of entertainment they could cover. But, I'm kind of curious, what will you not cover? So maybe Jamie, what are areas that you're like, this is off the table,
Yeah, I mean, pro sports. Pro sports is pretty much, it's like not something that we generally do, although there are some niches out there. So, when you hear about somebody not insuring their legs or their arms or their eyes or their hands, but a sports star who has a contract worth tens of millions of dollars and they're insured for injury, well, a lot of those are written by accident carriers that pool together. They might place it with 10 or 15 different carriers that all take a piece for a premium. So that's just kind of one of those specialty, it's like written on like an accident disability policy, where everybody takes a piece. So that's just kind of like one of those niche things. But from an injury perspective or, even a death perspective, pro sports isn't something that's generally in target for risk. I mean, certainly there are some where you might, you throw your hands up and say, why? I remember early in my underwriting career, we got a quote in for like this pro cricket league. And at the time it was like, okay, well, they're playing cricket. Like how dangerous is that going to be? But, there are carriers that you can have reinsurance. You have to look at your reinsurance agreements also to say, well, what are the reinsurers excluding? So you can't really cover something that you're not going to have coverage on the back end for either. But yeah, pro sports is something I think we would pretty much.
Max, what won't you write?
I mean, for me personally, in property and casualty, we don't write any reality television. However, at Chubb, like our international department writes reality TV, our A&H department does it as well. So I think it really depends on the line of business. Things that are really, from a liability standpoint, really dangerous or very large schedules of equipment, we tend to shy away from those.
All right, so final question from everyone. We'll start from boss and then move down. We're here about writing entertainers. So what can we all do, or what advice do you have the audience if you were to give them one takeaway on how to better, understand, triage, and write new business?
Yeah, I mean, I would say basically follow and use technology. I mean, in the examples that were just provided by the panel, especially for specialty lines, underwriters oftentimes receive far more submissions than they can handle. In one particular example, a small pollution line business received 7,000 submissions per year for a team of 3 people, and they only really ever dealt with 2,000 of them. The other 5,000, they were just thrown away, lost data, didn't even open these submissions. And so the ability to actually intelligently triage those submissions automatically by extracting the right data points, matching those against your underwriting guidelines, not only helps you to, in this particular case, help to identify an additional 2,000 submissions without having to do any additional acquisition costs. And at the same time, underwriters were able to process far more submissions by taking away all of the labor of having to go through those submissions. So they basically doubled their revenue just by using technology effectively. So I think those are the types of things that I've been looking at.
Next.
I think for me, since I'm on the underwriting side, it's really being an expert in that field. Entertainment sounds fun and sexy, right? Like people want to be in that field of insurance, but it's still a specialty, right? And it's a niche market. So really being an expert in that field, it doesn't necessarily have the most complex of exposures, but it definitely has unique exposures and, underwriting stunts and special effects and things like that, like we discussed earlier. So I think that's really the key point, really knowing that business from both a broker side and a carrier side, really understanding the unique differences of that business.
Jamie?
Yeah, so specialty lines have specialty carriers, they have specialty brokers, getting to know the specialty brokers and then creating tools, digital tools. I mean, we're all here, for the tech conference this week. I remember I think I went to the first InsurTech Connect in Las Vegas, and it was like, you had a couple thousand people who all got together and said, hey, we should really use computers, to do this. Wouldn't that be great? So creating those digital tools to create that path of least resistance for agents. Agents, no offense to anybody here who's an agent, they can be lazy, right? They don't want to do a lot of work. They've got a lot, and it's not because they don't want to. They've got a lot going on with their clients. They've got different lines. They have this line here, this line here. They all require different data points. So the more you can do to streamline your underwriting to match information they already have, if you don't need it, don't ask for it, and try and create processes that make it easy for them to submit business.
All right, well, I'll hand it off to Tony. Thanks to our panelists.
For educational session, I learned more about entertainment insurance than I've done in my life. So thank you. It is definitely more interesting than other lines of business, I would say. So thanks for making it entertaining.